With the invention of virtual reality glasses, policing entered a new era. Just by putting on the glasses, officers could revisit crime scenes whenever needed. However, it was essentially just a recording. They couldn't interact with anything or anyone within the simulation. Detective Luke was using the tech at a beach crime scene where a woman's body had been discovered. Suddenly a glitch, a flicker of static, and the next moment he noticed an ethereal figure materialize that wasn't part of the original scene. As the figure solidified, Luke could make out its features. He stared in disbelief. It was his wife Julie, who had died 20 years ago. Overcome, he instinctively called out her name. Incredibly, the figure heard him and turned around. Clearly, this was completely different from the non-interactive figures in the simulation. Luke rushed towards her, only to slam hard into the physical wall of the VR room he was actually standing in. However, a diagnostic check showed the VR equipment was functioning perfectly. Technically, something like this shouldn't be possible. Could it be, he wondered, that because his wife had also died on this very beach 20 years prior, the virtual spaces of the two separate cases had somehow overlapped? But the technicians shot that theory down immediately. Julie's case file hadn't even been digitized yet. Disappointed, Luke went home. Even though he had remarried, a part of him had never truly let Julie go. Driven by this unresolved grief, he returned to the station late that night and re-entered the beach simulation. And sure enough, there she was, standing alone, looking out at the ocean. He immediately called her name. She jumped, startled, but clearly didn't recognize the older version of Luke standing before her. After a brief, confusing exchange, Luke gathered that it was nighttime in her reality too. Their timelines were somehow synchronized. And crucially for Julie, her death was still 11 days away. He tried to explain everything, who he was, where he was from, but Julie didn't believe a word. She assumed this stranger was part of an elaborate prank orchestrated by her Luke, the younger version she knew, and turned to leave. Desperate to convince her, Luke started revealing intimate details about her life, things only her husband would know, right down to the location of a specific mole. Still, Julie dismissed it as just a very well-researched prank. Struggling to convince her, Luke had a sudden idea. According to her timeline, the next day was the World Cup semifinal between France and Croatia. Lillian Thuram will score twice, he predicted, and he added, your Luke promised you he quit smoking, but there's a pack hidden in the cereal box in the kitchen cupboard. Finding his predictions increasingly bizarre, Julie quickly left the virtual beach. But the next morning, after some hesitation, Julie couldn't resist checking the cupboard, and sure enough, there were the cigarettes. Meanwhile, the real Luke had waited anxiously in the VR room all night. As he'd hoped, Julie reappeared on the virtual beach. Overwhelmed with longing, he reached out to touch her, but their hands passed through each other. They existed in separate, parallel realities. Now, Julie finally believed the man standing before her truly was her husband from the future. So, she asked, what is this accident you mentioned? Luke pointed towards the cliffs behind them. In 11 days, he said grimly, you fall from there. An accident. But now that she knew her fate in advance, maybe, just maybe, it could be prevented.